And today we are sharing the second half of my conversation with Gypsy Rose Blanchard. But before we get into that, I wanted to address some of the conversation online about this interview and some of the feedback that I've gotten from you. First, I want to say that I know that some of you who listen to this show, including some survivors, have really complicated feelings about Gypsy's story, and in turn, my decision to air these episodes. And that's valid. This story has been held up as a monolith for Munchausen by proxy abuse, something we obviously hope to correct with the other stories we tell here on Nobody Should Believe Me. And I understand that the attention that this story has received can compound feelings of invisibility for survivors who don't feel represented by it. One of the reasons I wanted to talk to Gypsy is because she has expressed to me a number of times how much she wants to help elevate the voices of other survivors, which I think is a really laudable goal. This is the case I get asked about the most when people hear what I do for a living. It's a complicated cultural touchpoint, but it's a big one. And in case this isn't clear, I acknowledge that Gypsy participated in a horrific crime. Dee Dee Blanchard didn't deserve to be murdered, and I don't condone it. I can hold space for the idea that someone can be a victim and a perpetrator at the same time. And that happens to be true for both Gypsy and Dee Dee. And the reality is that Gypsy was held accountable for that crime in a way that perpetrators of abuse, even those who murder their own children, very rarely are. For me, Gypsy is neither a villain nor a vigilante heroine. She's a human being who shouldn't be defined by her worst moments. There are a lot of complexities around victims who commit acts of violence against their abusers. And we're going to have my wonderful colleague, Dr. Kathy Ayub, on to discuss some of those elements in a bit more detail. And again, if this discussion is just not something you have the space for, that's okay. There has also been a dedicated effort by people online to debunk the story of Gypsy's abuse, and that is entirely separate from the complexities of the crime she participated in. This narrative rests on a couple of things, some of which we actually address in the episode, but which I will recap here because they're very common tactics used to disprove Munchausen by proxy abuse and so are worth addressing. The first is this idea that because Gypsy has a genetic condition that could have been responsible for some of her symptoms, that negates abuse. This is a misunderstanding of Munchausen by proxy abuse. A child can have a medical issue that is exaggerated or made worse by a parent, or used as a justification for over-medicalizing them, isolating them, keeping them out of school, etc. That's all abuse. There's also the idea that Gypsy was actually the one fabricating symptoms rather than Dee Dee. And again, this shows a lack of knowledge about this abuse dynamic and misunderstands the agency that even an older victim has in a case like this. This abuse is not confined to medical abuse. It's financial, emotional, and psychological as well. The third big idea that comes up a lot is that Dee Dee Blanchard was never diagnosed with factitious disorder imposed on another or held criminally accountable for her abuse. But anyone who's been listening to this show for a while knows that that's true in most cases. And unfortunately, I know how dedicated the effort to disprove the existence of abuse is in some corners. So these are all arguments that I've seen before. So again, more to come in our conversation with Dr. Ayub. You may have noticed that the conversation has gotten a little out of hand online, and we are going to moderate that space. But please do continue to let us know your thoughts on email at hello@nobodysshouldbelieveme.com. We do our very best to be responsive over there.